You know, my father actually immigrated from Grenada to this country, and he was lucky enough and he was able to become a U.S. citizen, and he's been, you know, working in government throughout his career after he graduated from engineering school. But many families come here without resources, and they're coming here basically for hope and for a change and for a difference and for a better life. And we as a state have embraced individuals who have immigrated here. And if we're going to truly embrace people who come here for a better life, then we must treat them with dignity and respect and give them the same protections as any other citizen or resident of the state of Maryland. And that's why I support the DREAM Act. And I was very much a part of its passage in the House, and I spoke very feverishly about it during the last election, because these young people want an opportunity to make a better life for themselves and their families. And as the state of Maryland, as a progressive state like Maryland is, we have the opportunity to be a leader in how we treat those who come to this country undocumented, but want to be a part of our society. And the Attorney General should protect everyone equally.
Now, before you sit down, I'd actually like to ask a follow-up about that, because this is the kind of issue where it seems like legislation is often necessary, but discretionary enforcement can be a part of that. So the Office of Attorney General is sort of in a peculiar position there with respect to whether it can back things like that, how it chooses to enforce these laws, what laws it supports. Could you speak a little bit to the substance of what you see as being the way that policy can hit the road there on that issue?
As we looked at things, for instance, we passed a driver's license bill because individuals weren't able to get their license. And if you can't get a license, then you can't go to work and you can't feed yourselves and your families. And so as a state, we decided to give a status to individuals who wanted to drive but who were undocumented, the ability to have a license so that they can at minimum have a job. So we have to look at our laws and our policies to determine whether or not we're providing equality and fairness for those who are undocumented who are living here in our state. And as Attorney General, my responsibility is to identify those areas where we need to either enhance, strengthen, or create new laws and new opportunities for individuals in our state to be successful.
Thank you. Senator Frosch?
Thank you. Look, our national immigration policy is a mess. The debate has been hijacked by the Tea Party. My personal philosophy, and the one that I have followed in the General Assembly, is to be both welcoming and realistic. Welcoming in the sense that the people we're talking about here are our neighbors, they're our co-workers, they're our friends, and realistic in the sense that they're here. I'm proud to have supported the DREAM Act in the General Assembly. I'm proud that I led through the Senate the legislation that Delegate Braveboy referred to a moment ago, the one that allows people without legal status to obtain driver's licenses. It makes their lives better, but it makes all of us safer. Studies show that we're safer when the person behind the wheel is trained, licensed, and insured. Attorney General Gansler, along with 34 other attorneys general across the nation, has written to Congress and written to the President asking for immigration reform that includes a path to citizenship. I think that's a good step. I would build on his work. I would prosecute serious crimes, but I would take a sensible approach to people who are here with good character, who pay their taxes, and who want to make a contribution to our society.
Thank you. Delegate Frick?
Well, I don't think there's any question that our immigration system is broken. Congress needs to do something about it. They need to solve it. They need to pass comprehensive immigration reform that contains a path to citizenship. And I hope they will do that. But enforcing the immigration laws is a federal responsibility. It is not the role of local law enforcement, contrary to what John Ashcroft used to tell people. It is not the responsibility of local law enforcement to enforce immigration laws. Local law enforcement and local agencies, we've got our priorities. We've got our responsibilities. We need to keep people safe. We need to enforce all kinds of domestic laws. And sometimes trying to enforce immigration laws runs counter to that. We need people, documented or undocumented, to be giving true information to police that will catch criminals. If they're afraid that going to the police will mean they are deported, all of us suffer because all of us are less safe. If the undocumented can't participate in the driving system, can't get educated, can't get licensed properly, that hurts all of us. Because when I'm on the roads, what I care about is whether someone's stopping at a red light, not whether someone's got their papers in order. So, I think our immigration system is broken. I don't think it's the state's role to be enforcing immigration law.
Before you sit down, just as a follow-up, you talked about the enforcement with respect to things like licensing and what have you, and how that actually impacts people at the state level. But I was wondering if you did see any role at all for the Attorney General in that national debate. As we've seen in Virginia, there's often a platform that the Attorney General can have in these national issues. In Virginia, with the opposition to Obamacare being an example of that. Do you see that being something that this platform would offer to you?
Sure, I think there are some roles. I think the Attorney General is more than just an enforcer, more than just a counselor. There's also an advocacy function. And I think the Maryland Attorney General could do a good job of, and I think our Attorney General has, by trying to speak up, urge Congress to solve this problem, and articulate the strains that it puts on our state. And frankly, there's strains when different states handle these things differently. We do really need a uniform process, a uniform policy across the United States, and not force states or even localities to try to come up with their own ideas on how they're going to enforce a system that we all know is broken.
Thank you, sir. Delegate Cardin?
Thank you, Ben. The Constitution declares unmistakably that no state shall deprive, and I quote, any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. I think that we are required by the Constitution and by the fundamental principles of fairness to provide all persons, regardless of your immigration status, with the same protections that are afforded and given and granted by the Constitution. As for the role of the AG, as you have already asked a couple times in the immigration debate, just last year in Arizona versus the United States, the Supreme Court determined that the states have a very, very limited role in enforcement of federal immigration policy and immigration laws. That said, the AG does have a role, and it's called making sure that every single Marylander, every Marylander is treated fairly and equally. My great-grandfather came to the United States from Ukraine and started a business with nothing more than a horse and a buggy. That business was able to provide my parents and my grandparents with the opportunities to go to school and to follow their dreams. Maryland gave my family a chance, and it's time we give the next generation of immigrants that same opportunity.